Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278. Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Ann DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us.
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast here on Patchwork Heart Ministry. My name is Ann DeSantis. Great to be here with you. I have an amazing guest for all of you this evening. I have Gina Christian. She is the senior content producer at Catholic Philly. And for those who are from my area, I'm sure that you all have heard of CatholicPhilly.com. So why don't we start with your own story, Gina, because obviously, you know, you're at Catholic Philly, you've been there for a while, but we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Wow. And it has been a journey. And I've shared this, in my writing. So, in terms of my faith, I grew up Catholic. I actually grew up in South Jersey and, lifelong Catholic school. And like many today, I got to college and, once my faith hit the world, I really started to struggle. And I also had some challenges in my background, which I've shared. I'm an adult survivor of child sexual abuse. And, that definitely led to a struggle with God. And to kind of, summarize where that journey took me, Christ was always there. Christ was always there, even when I wasn't always paying attention. And ultimately, through a series of events, what ended up happening is I realized that God was not my enemy in that process, that Christ very much had his hand on me. And though he never intended for those things to happen to me, as we read in the book of Genesis, in the case of Joseph, what you intended for my harm, God intended for my good. And, as the 8th chapter of Romans tells us, all things work together for good to those who love God. And that has been borne out in my life. I can witness to anyone on that. So what started to happen was the gifts of writing and research that I had always, embraced as a child, and that kind of got sidetracked in dealing with some of the challenges of my past. I began to re-embrace them and started off writing freelance stories for CatholicPhilly.com, which for some readers who may not know this, we used to be the Catholic Standard and Times, which was, a really well-known print Catholic paper when people used to read papers. And then it moved digital. Our editor, Matt Gambino, saw very early on, probably a decade, a lot ahead of a lot of other publications, that moving to digital for Catholic press was the way to go. And so he set it up. And then when the paper folded, we then transitioned fully. And then I, came on board about 9 years into that process. Since then, I've taken on more and more writing. One of the things that I love to do, I write a weekly commentary, but what I really love to do, and what I think has been the most fulfilling thing in what I do is, and it ties in with this podcast, Sowing Hope. There are so many stories of brokenness and woundedness and conflict and injustice that we see in the headlines every day. And that's, unfortunately, that's this life. But that's not all of this life. And what Catholic press is able to do, without disregarding the very real wounds of the world, is it's able to bring those wounds in a faith perspective, and to say, how do people of faith meet these challenges? And I have the great honor and privilege of pretty much every day getting to go out there and highlight the absolutely incredible and largely unsung work of ordinary people, many of them lay, clergy and religious too, of course, who day in and day out do nothing more and nothing less than lift up Christ in a world that needs him more than ever. And that takes many forms. A large part of my work involves highlighting the work of Archdiocesan Catholic Social Services, which is an incredible group of people, a longstanding ministry that really began in Philadelphia at the end of the 18th century. In 1797, I believe, was the date, after the yellow fever epidemic left so many children orphans. Men and women began to wrap their arms around them in Christ and began to found the ministries that became what we now have as Archdiocesan Catholic Social Services. So from, children in foster care to people struggling with housing and homelessness issues, or hunger, or addiction, whatever the problem is, I get to highlight the good work of these people and give voice to people, or rather not give voice, because voice is given by God, but give space for the voices of people whose story doesn't always get to be told, the people who receive and participate in those services. So
you are very good at what you do. I love reading any piece that you've done, and they're always there every week. Catholic Philly comes out every Friday, I believe, isn't it?
Well, we're a website. A lot of people, we're 24/7, but we do an email newsletter that comes out once a week. And what we do is we highlight some articles. Hey, go check us out. It kind of keeps us, on people's radar, but you can go anytime, 24/7, because I'm on there. So you'll see me post stories at 2 a.m. So, and there's a prize. If you're the first one to read my story, email me and let me know. I'll send you, no, I can't send you anything, but I'll pray for you. How's that?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to address what you said about your story. I didn't do that yet, and I want to make sure that I do, because I really appreciate your openness about this. I mean, this is something that years ago people just didn't share, right? They went through things like that, and it was a hidden thing. And so you bring it out into the light, and your faith has really gotten you through so much. And now look at the life that you're leading. I mean, I can just see it in your smile and in the happiness that is provided because you're in ministry, because you are able to see how the Catholic Church can respond to, as you said, all those really challenging and hard things that people go through, not just in this greater Philadelphia area, but everywhere, right? Because what affects us affects the whole world. And so thank you for the work you do. What is it that you like best about your job, and also just about being involved in Catholic ministry?
Well, as I said, I really am blessed to just be able to lift up the work of those who are lifting up Christ, because it gives life, and the works of darkness just breed sadness and sorrow and more woundedness. But when you're involved in, really actively covering how the wounds of the world are slowly being healed and knitted together and made whole, it's just so inspiring. I've had absolutely jaw-dropping conversations with people who their words just echo, in my heart for months afterwards. And in fact, if you look at a lot of what I write, really, I'm trying not to tell too much of the narrative myself. I mean, I organize it in a format that is cohesive. I get I vet the information. Whatever I'm presenting, whether it's a food giveaway or a ministry or whatever, or an issue that's being responded to, such as addiction, I make sure I've got my data, you know, and I put it in a context, and I'll do all the research in the world to, you know, make sure we're clear. But really, it's the people I interview who tell the story. And it's really their quotes that are what carry people and carry the story, because, you know, they are the ones who live that story. And to be able to tell that, I mean, an example, this past weekend, we had here at the Archdiocesan Pastoral Center, which is right next to the cathedral, Catholic Social Services. It's one of its ministries to those in homelessness. St. John's Hospice was here, joining with Archdiocesan Nutritional Development Services and just a host of other people. And all they were doing was, you know, giving out boots to those who are in homelessness and warm clothing. And then, you know, for pregnant women that came, if they needed baby supplies, all of that. Well, I had the great honor of talking to one of the clients and at length, and he was a man who was in homelessness. He had served in the US military, and he was, you know, 2 years on the streets here. And he was just so grateful. But when I got to, and he actually stopped me in the interview, because I record this, everyone laughs. I mean, I always feel bad. Here's my iPhone, and I am shoving it under everyone's nose, you know, in the Archdiocese. What do you have to say? What do you think about this? But he stopped and he said, thank you. He said, I haven't had people that I could tell this to at length. And his was a story too, that, you know, someone who had a lot of brokenness that kind of got him to this place, you know. And it's funny, because I was thinking it ties in so well with the book that you just wrote on love and care for the marginalized, you know. And one of that starts with acknowledging this is a human being in front of me. Let me listen. And if I recall correctly, I mean, at least one of your chapters was devoted to that, right? About listening, actually listening, you know.
That, yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for even bringing that up. Yes. And the heart of my book, if I could put it in just a one line, it's about reaching those people and supporting those who don't have the love and support they deserve. You know, everybody deserves love and support, and not everybody gets it.
No. And they're hungering for it, for it.
Yeah. And the other thing is that we always think, you know, when you read about Mother Teresa or her good work with the poorest of the poor, and there are always the poorest of the poor, but sometimes those people are very close to us that we don't even realize it, right? I mean, they're people that we work with, they're people that are in our neighborhoods, church, school, everywhere. So thanks for bringing that up. But going backward, what you said about the event that just happened at the Archdiocese, I just so happened to see Amy Stoner recently, and she told me about it. I was at the Catholic Charities Appeal breakfast that was at the Springfield Country Club that was for some of the donors. And I got to sit with Amy, and she told us about, in fact, she told the whole group about it. And it was just really beautiful. So is there anything more like that, stories that you can share with us? Because you see a lot in terms of the work of Catholic Social Services and Catholic Charities Appeal.
Yeah. Well, one thing, and speaking of Amy Stoner, and Amy Stoner is, again, the director of, she has a long title, Community-Based Homelessness and Housing Services for Archdiocese and Catholic Social Services. And I have to tell her to get a new title, because it's just entirely too long to print all the time. But she also received papal honors recently, a couple years ago. So my nickname for her, she's Dame Amy Stoner, and I call her Damie for short. But she just, the joke is, and it's funny because this is another event that just took place, the Catholic Social Services, the Pro-Life Union of Greater Philadelphia, and the Capuchin Friars of the, I'm going to get this hopefully right, the province of St. Augustine, opened basically a mother-baby center at the Padre Pio Prayer Center, which is located up in the city's Frankfurt section, one of the poorest neighborhoods, one of the ground zeros for drug addiction in Philadelphia and largely in the country, unfortunately. But in the midst of this incredible need and kind of desert of spirit, if you will, this wonderful place called the Cenacle, which is the upper room, right? You know, where Christ appeared to the apostles, where he had his last meal, the Last Supper with them, instituted the Eucharist, and then, you know, gave them the gift of the Holy Spirit. This place is together. So Amy was at this, and one of the priests who was involved joked that, well, when Amy asks you to do something, you do it. And what it does is, this is the life of the church, just right on the front lines. women who are in, crisis pregnancies or struggling in those first few years of parenthood are getting all the support they need, practical stuff, diapers, parenting skills, education, and they walk with them. They're not just saying, okay, well, now you had the baby, good luck. They're walking with them and developing relationships with them and walking with them on that journey. And these are women that do feel very marginalized. Maybe they don't have a husband or a partner or even a family that's willing to come alongside them in that pregnancy, but that child is here, that child's coming, it's a child of God. And, Catholic Social Services, Pro-Life Union, the Cenacle, the Capuchin Friars, the church is wrapping its arms around, these folks. So Amy was a big driver in that. And when I interviewed her, and that story is up on CatholicPhilly.com, she made an interesting point. One of the priests who, Father Bob Bozzoli, who used to be the pastor at, it's kind of a long story, but a church, St. Joachim's, that, merged with Holy Innocents Parish and then eventually was a worship site, was eventually bought by the Capuchin order. So you had a parish that closed. Okay. And that's always a sad thing. Unbeknownst to a lot of the folks, area Catholics started praying to Padre Pio that site would once again become a parish. Now, canonically, that wasn't possible. But what ended up happening is the Capuchin order came in, bought the place. Okay, now we've got a prayer center. And then Catholic Social Services said, oh, we could use that. Let's work with you guys. And then one by one, people came back. And now this garden is growing again, and we've got people that are saying, oh, in the midst of all this darkness, there's that one place. There's that place where people know what love is, and they know what truth is, and they know what respect is, and they know what hope is. And I'm going to go there. And one by one. And isn't that how the souls came to Jesus? Those big crowds. It wasn't the town had a meeting. All right, everyone, we're going to go follow Jesus. So all of Nazareth. Well, Nazareth didn't really want him, unfortunately, because they didn't get him. But, it wasn't like Capernaum said, we took a meeting and all the town will be out there. No, it was people one by one, family by family. Who is that man? Who is he? What is he? I need him.
Personal, right?
It's personal.
It's very personal. And I think I have to say, you're mentioning the different organizations, like you mentioned Pro-Life Union and Catholic Social Services, and I mentioned Catholic Charities Appeal. I think the one thing that I see in our archdiocese, and you're in the middle of it with Catholic Philly, is that it's like a place to call home, because it's all these different branches and they're really reaching people, real people.
Yeah.
And I just think it's beautiful. And I love the work of Catholic Philly, because you are out there for everything, like all the events that happen in the area, and everything that's going on in the church. Not just like church event related either. I mean, it has to do with ministry. It has to do with what's going on in the world, what's going on in your communities.
Yeah.
Schools,
or people,
churches, people stories, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like it's funny when you say everywhere. I wish I could be, and I think it speaks to just how much hope there is out there. I mean, in the 5 counties that comprise the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, there are so many wonderful stories. I can't get to them all, but I'm praying to Padre Pio that I can locate and be at more of these events. You know what I mean? But it's interesting when you said about reaching people. I was starting and I kind of lost my track there and got off on a tangent, but with the Padre Pio Center, this former pastor at St. Joachim's, which had closed again, right? Father Bob Bozzoli, Amy Stoner was up at the Northeast Family Service Center in the Mayfair section of the city for Catholic Social Services. And she said, oh, you're the new pastor, let's have a meeting. So he said, well, okay. And by car, this would have been maybe a 10-15 minute drive. Most of us who drive a car be like, oh yeah, no problem. Well, he said, no, I'm going to do what my people do. And they take public transportation. So he showed up 30 minutes late to the meeting. His donor was not happy about that. But it was funny because what she said was, for her, it was a turning point. And he said, this is how my people travel. And she said, you know what? We're going to start traveling to them. So in addition to meeting, she said, because back in the day it was, oh, you come to us. And I think that very clearly speaks to especially what Pope Francis has talked about.
I was just thinking that.
Book. Yeah. And what Archbishop Perez talks about. I mean, we have, he is out there, and really now that COVID, the poor man came in and then COVID shut everything down, and all he wanted to do was go out and put his arms around his people and say, I'm here, I love you, and I'm ready to lead you to Christ and keep walking with you on your journey with Christ. And so, but that's the whole thing, is that we go, and he said this in recent homilies too, that I've covered, is that, it starts with come. Christ said, come to his apostles, come to his disciples. But then he said, go. go into the world. And I remember sitting there, I heard the Archbishop say that in 2 recent homilies, one to youth and then one on Mission Sunday. And I thought, yeah, that's it. Because when I cover him, I transcribe his homilies to the letter, so that I get it right. Yeah, but that's the whole point. So we're going out there, but we're meeting people. And it's that word that I know it gets overused, but it's the truth. It's encounter,
Yeah. Accompaniment and encounter. Yeah, both of those.
Yeah.
In fact, it's funny, you were talking about the Archbishop, and I just so happened to be at 2 events where I went to the Young Catholic Professionals event with my daughter. I'm not a young Catholic, but
you were there that night and I didn't talk to you? Was that the one at St. John Newman that I didn't talk to you at? I'm so sorry.
No, this one was the one just the other day with the at the Archdiocese this past week.
Oh, right.
And then the next morning we had the breakfast for the Catholic Charities Appeal. So I got to see him 2 days in a row.
Nice.
And he was telling all of us how busy he is with all of his, meetings and masses and, events and things like that. And so you are so right. I mean, he wants to be out there like amongst the sheep, just like as Pope Francis has said that before, that smelling like the sheep. And so I think he's the same way.
He very much is. And, he told an interesting story at one homily, and I can't remember for which mass this was, but it was at the cathedral. And he was telling us how he had been in the Holy Land on a pilgrimage several years before and had the opportunity to watch an actual shepherd in action. I think that's the one thing that, as modern, or suburban, urban, Catholics, sometimes we're not down on the farm anymore as much in our culture. So anyway, he watched this shepherd for about 20 minutes and he said, what the shepherd really did? He walked among the sheep, and once in a while, one would kind of get out of line and he'd kind of, yank him back into play, or, if one was in distress, he would go out. But really the large part of his job was simply one of a watchful, loving, attentive presence,
Yeah, that's exactly what it's all about. And it's a good example, I think, for us as Catholics. When we see that example, it gives us an example of how we can go forth and be missionaries of mercy, right? Isn't that what it's about?
It is. And it's
about being missionaries of mercy.
Absolutely. And but the thing is, it's so funny because I think when we call up that word missionaries, I mean, people of my generation, a little bit older, I'm not telling my age, but you can probably figure it out because all my cultural references like, oh, you're a child of the 80s. Yes. Well, anyway, but we think of missionaries as going over there, like, oh, it's overseas or it's over there, or it's a completely different culture. And the thing is, I just had a woman from Nigeria tell me this at the mission mass, the Pontifical World Mission Sunday. She said, and she herself was from Nigeria, but she said, your missionary field can be your workplace. Yes. I mean, and it's just exactly what you were saying. You could be, my goodness, you can be in line at the grocery store with someone if, you stopped ordering from Whole Foods and you're back at the store, like I am, spending too much money. But, you could be in line next to someone and maybe it's just a smile. Maybe it's just a nod of the head. It's just something, that lets them know that I see you, you're human, I acknowledge you. And I think that one of the downsides of these is that we do this.
Yeah. That's right. And you were talking about my book, and I'll just make one other point about that, is that part of what I talk about in that book is, as Catholics, sometimes, we're given that list of kind of the commandments and the rules of the faith, and it's all very important stuff. But part of that has to be the way we treat human beings in our everyday interaction. It's not just a checklist to say that, I give so much money to my church, I'm good friends with my pastor, I'm on this board of directors, I do this, my child goes to Catholic school. I mean, I'm naming a few, but I think you get my point.
Yeah.
We have to have that positive interaction that shows that we are kind, that we care, right? Caring is just such a big deal. It really is. And I think that's what you do. That's what you do. That's what Catholic Philly does. It's all about mixing in being a, quote, good person with our faith, right? It's got to be mixed in together.
Yeah.
So I just thank you for your great work. Is there something about Catholic Philly? Now I'm going to ask people to subscribe because it's a great podcast.
Thank you.
Great articles. It's an awesome website. Go to CatholicPhilly.com and subscribe and look up Gina Christian, please. But tell them more about, like, if they sign up for the weekly email, which I get, and I'm always like, ooh, it's Friday, I get to get that email. Tell us more.
Well, again, I mean, the email is just, a way of reminding you we're here, highlighting and curating a few stories that we think you might be interested in. And I would suggest that, you can always check us out. Like I said, if you see an article that got posted at 2 a.m. and you're the first to read it, let me know and I'll pray for your intentions. You're one rosary just for you, because we really are 24/7. And that's really the, that's the culture that we live in. People expect news. One thing though, that is becoming clearer is that I think that it's funny because not a lot of people might be aware of this unless you're actually in the biz, so to speak. But the Second Vatican Council, in what I believe was one of its early decrees, I think it was the second one issued, called Inter Mirifica, meaning among the wonders. And it talked about the need for a Catholic press. And, we have a lot of great hardworking Catholic journalists out there world over. Our particular content partners are Catholic News Service, which are the official media outlet of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. Fantastic people, highly professional, dedicated, faithful, and just so hardworking. But, it's a partnership. And so what we are looking for are for people to partner with us and share your stories with us. And if you can, help support, in the way that, we're willing to pay for other news outlets and entertainment and stuff that doesn't always give our faith a chance to express itself or to show just what's going on out there, and I don't think that anyone should read just one publication. I would never recommend that, and I don't think anyone of faith and reason would. But, it's important to understand fully what's going on out there. And there's a lot of good going on out there. And again, and even when we tackle issues that, hey, it's ugly, the clerical sexual abuse scandal was ugly, continues to be ugly. Any type of financial improprieties, any of that's wounding, but we need to deal with it honestly. And we need to deal with it through the lens of faith. And I think a lot of times we compartmentalize and we say, oh, well, that's my faith, but here's the rest of life. And no, it's all,
you can't separate it.
Yeah. No. I had the opportunity when I first joined Catholic Philly to do a series on the opioid epidemic from a Catholic perspective, because I'm thinking we have a faith that can handle this. We have a Lord who conquered sin and death. He can conquer addiction. Will it be easy? No. Is it going to be a lot of hard work on our part? Yeah, but we have it. And we got to present that. That's not something that maybe you saw in other news outlets, which certainly rightly talked about the tragedy, this, that, and the other thing. But faith is more than just on Sunday. So why should news just only be your, secular outlet? So yeah.
And neither is Catholic Philly, right?
Right. And it's participatory again, and here's the other thing that's important too, is that because most people experience the Catholic Church at the level of their parish, become the stewards of your parish life, get involved in your parish life and tell us what you're doing, and it's there in those communities, that's how the body of Christ gets knit together, and just blossoms and attains its full stature, which is, I think, how Paul puts it. Or maybe it's Peter. Don't quote me.
it's where the universal church. It begins with us, right? Where we are, right where we are. We're all part of it. And it's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
So now I want to mention one more thing, actually two more things before we end. First, I want to make a recognition because my co-host is not with us this evening. And his name is Bill Snyder. And this is Patchwork Heart Ministry. You can subscribe on YouTube to the Sowing Hope podcast. Bill is from Wisconsin, but he's originally from the Philadelphia area. So when we do podcasting, I'm here in the Philadelphia area and he's out there in Wisconsin with his family.
You're covering
I want
the
to make
country.
this shout out.
Love it.
Yeah, it's awesome. Now, also, I wanted to mention that you do have a podcast. I'd love for people to subscribe. Tell us a little bit more before we end.
Sure. It's insidecatholicphilly.com. We've been producing a podcast. We have various guests on. The next one that's going to be up, hopefully, in the next few days is Archbishop Charles Chaput. We did a nice interview with him on the meaning of new evangelization. With COVID, we unfortunately had to kind of, focus on, we didn't get to do as many podcasts as we liked because of the lockdown, but now that we're emerging from that, we are also, if people have a good story to tell, let me know. I really want to give a space for the voices of people that don't always get a chance to share their faith or share their ministry. in as full a way as I think would benefit, people. So yeah, I enjoy it. And we also do videos too. In fact, the Archbishop has just come out with a new vlog that we are hosting on CatholicPhilly.com. The first episode's up, and he'll be on a monthly basis, just speaking from the heart, as he does so well, about issues of faith that he wants to share with his flock. So yeah,
so good.
And of course, you can always get any official archdiocesan announcements to all of the Archbishop's messages. There's just a real wealth of information. The other thing too that we also have are a lot of local columnists, that share their faith and what they're doing. So.
It's a huge website. I mean, honestly, there's so much going on there.
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful that you gave me, you talked about those people and how you interview people and give them that opportunity. You gave me that opportunity. So thank you.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. No, yes. I could talk all day. And it's funny because I used to say, years ago when I was thinking maybe I had a call to religious life, and who knows, right? I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to go into a contemplative order. And I remember a friend of mine who was a deacon just looked at me silently, and I said, you don't think I can keep my mouth shut long enough, do you? And he said, I did not want to tell you that, but yeah. So if you want to talk, I want to talk. Call me, right?
You are an honor, honestly, for us to have you on this podcast. I know that Bill Snyder was disappointed he couldn't join, but maybe
we can do another one.
Yeah, maybe we can do another one.
Yeah, and you have to come back on ours. You have to come back on ours. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
I do audio because you see my hair. I don't like to do too much with
no,
hair.
It looks good. Looks good. Well, thank
you. Look at
her. Yeah, I love that in the background.
I love. Big shout out to the Blessed Mother.
Amen. So I want to thank you again.
Thank you.
Gina Christian, please everyone subscribe again. It's CatholicPhilly.com. I know we get audience here from outside the Philadelphia area, but there's a lot to learn, a lot to see on that website, even if you're from another state.
Oh, sure, because we carry world and national Catholic news through Catholic News Service. So you'll always find something that's of interest to your region, on CatholicPhilly.com.
That's right. God bless everyone. We'll see you on Sowing Hope next week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2. Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278. 3278.